Hello, everybody. Welcome to our June community call. Appreciate everybody tuning in. I'm Roland Grouse, product manager at Agoric, for those that don't know me. And for our community calls, please do chime in, talk to us. While I've got some slides to present, I'm going to go through a couple important topics today, but would love to take questions during it. I can see the comments that roll in through Discord or through YouTube itself, so please do chime in. And with that, I'm going to just kick us off. So we've got a bunch to talk about. So we're going to go through the testnet stats. So the staking dynamics phase ended earlier in May, and we pushed out the stress test phase. So I'll talk a little bit about that. Talk about stats for submissions that came in. We saw some really good challenge tasks. And then I'm going to talk about, for the first time, our mainnet rollout schedule. So Agoric is targeting a phased mainnet, and I'm going to go through what those phases might look like, what users will be able to do, what developers will be able to do, and talk through that. Also talk through full-time positions we are hiring, and then upcoming events. All right, let's get going then. So we can start with the testnet numbers. We are really pleased. The staking dynamics phase was a really, really important phase on our side. And I think some of this will be a little clear as I start talking through the mainnet rollout phases, but really what we were doing for the first time was connecting the Cosmos layer with the Agoric VM, the JavaScript layer. And as validators in the testnet, you were asked to do a bunch of things that required something in Cosmos, like staking build or receiving run rewards, and then taking it into JavaScript, using that in the Agoric Treasury, in the Agoric VM layer, making a trade, buying some additional build, and then going back and staking that. And that really sort of stretched a bunch of our capabilities and tested things in an end-to-end way that we hadn't done before. And it was an exciting phase for us in a lot of ways. And so we definitely uncovered some stuff, and that was good to work through. And we learned a lot, which caused us to push out the stress test phase, for a few extra weeks, because we just had so many learnings that we can basically just keep rolling and building additional capabilities based on what we learned in this phase. So the validators were awesome this phase. We had a bunch of things that we had to do on short notice. We had tasks that we had planned out and didn't work the way we expected, and we had to change, and everyone stuck with us, and that was really awesome. So we had a bunch of great submissions. I'm going to go through actually two of the challenge task winners. So the challenge task for this phase was to submit something that dealt with our staking API. And the first winner was Omniflix. So Omniflix, you guys submitted an actual staking UI, which was sort of what we envisioned when we thought about the challenge task. So, you can connect with Kepler, you can stake your build tokens, you can undelegate, redelegate, and it's not shown here in the screenshot, but it also had a summary of the governance proposals that were outstanding. So that was great. Really happy to see that come in. And then also King Super. So King Super submitted a Discord bot, which allowed you within Discord to query status of delegations and things like that on different validators. And we thought that was really cool. And as the community grows, we really want Discord to be a big part of that. So I can see King Super reacting in chat. So yeah, we really want Discord to be a part of that. So having capabilities in Discord has been helpful for a lot of other communities, and we love to see that. So great job, guys. There were a few other submissions also that were really great that I'm not going through here, but you'll see that in the points awarding. So really appreciate all the effort. So with that, let's talk about mainnet. So similar to the testnet, which has had or will have 5 total phases, the mainnet will be phased as well. And we can talk through in this call sort of an initial version of what those phases we expect them to look like. Obviously, this is sort of subject to a bunch of things, including governance decisions themselves, but this is sort of how we see mainnet happening. Four primary phases is what we're targeting. And I'll go through each one of these, but really it ends in building up to permissionless smart contract installation, which is really what we want to get to, where anyone building a smart contract in our VM can deploy it without any sort of governance vote, anything like that. And so this is our pathway to get there. And again, I really would like to encourage comments, questions to come in as I go, because this is the first time we're really talking about our thoughts here publicly. Would love to know what you guys are thinking, or what is useful or would be helpful to go into more detail either on this call or on a future call. Okay, so let's talk about phase 0. So the first thing you may notice there is the target date, which is this month. That is extremely soon and clearly overlaps with the testnet. So that requires a little additional context here. Phase 0 really is the Cosmos layer only. So there's no Agoric VM involved in phase 0. It's really about the distribution of tokens to initial holders, like, for example, potentially testnet participants, things like that. And it would launch with transfers disabled. Validators will come online. So probably some seed validators based on our current relationships, but then as soon as we launch, it would be permissionless validators can join. And then we would leave it to governance to enable certain features, for example, Cosmos level transfers or things like that. So those actual governance proposals will be a future thing, but on launch, it will just be distribution and governance. If you are a developer, what we would ask you to do during this time is work on the bounties that we are going to be talking about in the initial set today. And then also we're really interested in infrastructure and tooling, and then also contracts to be launched on testnet to prepare for mainnet, all of which will be super useful. And we'll talk about the pathway for some of those contracts as we go. All right, so that's phase 0. Phase 1 is the launch of the Agoric Treasury, which will be using the Agoric VM. Of course, it's in the JavaScript layer. Anyone that's in the testnet has seen it. If you have interacted with our beta at all, you've seen the initial UI for it. But the Treasury launch includes vaults and the automated market maker. So what you would be able to do as a user is bring your build or potentially other assets as allowed by governance and mint run against it. We would have IBC enabled so that users can bring in those assets. So whether that is pegged ETH coming over the Gravity bridge to the Cosmos hub to Agoric, or whether it is atoms from the hub, that would be our ideal. Is those core assets get enabled early on and can collateralize vaults in the Treasury. And then with IBC, that would also mean that the run that you mint could be brought to another chain. So those of you paying attention the last couple of months might have seen Run in the Gravity Dex competition. We see an opportunity for a solid stable coin in the Cosmos ecosystem, and Run could be that stable coin. So bringing your Run to a Gravity Dex or other Osmosis Dex or things like that could be a very interesting first use case here. If you're a developer, still you'll be launching against bounties or building against the bounties, infrastructure and tooling still. But then I'll actually talk about phase 2 a little bit to get you a better sense of what you can be thinking about as a developer here. So again, phase 1 here is the Agoric Treasury launch. We're targeting Q3 for that. Likely in sort of roughly the same time frame, we would have phase 2, which is permissioned smart contracts. And this is a really interesting phase, and I think it's specifically interesting on Agoric versus other chains where there's a little bit less capability. We have some, I think there's a big opportunity here if you are a developer, if you're looking to launch a DeFi project, to look at this phase even prior to permissionless launch as a place to launch a business. And so I'm going to spend a little time talking about it. Again, please do ask questions as things occur to you here. But in phase 2, the smart contract installations on the Agoric chain will be obviously the Treasury, additional contracts that the Agoric team has built and tested and feels very comfortable with, but then also contracts launched by others that may have gone through a testing process and are allowed by governance. So it will be a permission phase. Really the reason for this is the Agoric chain, we have security audits that we're looking to go through, and opening ourselves up to permissionless contracts opens ourselves up to all sorts of adversarial code that we want to make sure we're ready for before we allow. But before that, we can allow these permissioned contracts to come in, and a contract in Agoric gets installed on the chain, but can get instantiated multiple times with different parameters or different policies even. So for example, you could have a loan contract that uses a different kind of liquidation from one that has existed before. So even one loan or any kind of contract installation could lead to a bunch of businesses which actually meaningfully differentiate themselves. So an example that I just think of off the top of my head on Ethereum is Compound versus Cream, right? Both of them are loan protocols, but the primary differentiation between them is Compound has a very strict governance process for what assets they allow, and Cream doesn't. Cream is much more laissez-faire with their risk, and as a result has a different risk profile for users, but also allows a whole bunch more assets to get launched. And those are two totally viable projects that are competing with each other, but differentiated. And things like that will be how to think about the permission smart contract phase in Agoric. And it may even be more expansive than that, where you have sort of a generic NFT platform where you could almost entirely customize a totally different NFT from someone else just using the same contracts. So the reason I'm spending time on this is that I think it would be easy as a user or developer to dismiss this phase and to wait for the permissionless launch. And I would encourage you not to do that. I think there's going to be a lot of cool stuff that gets built here that that launches. And then also, if you're looking to build something new that isn't part of the permission contracts, we'll have a process where that can get submitted to governance and potentially added. Okay, great. So the timeline there is sort of roughly in a similar time frame as the Treasury launch. And then the next phase is permissionless. So this is where chain is open completely. Anyone can deploy whatever you build. That is after the Agoric VM has gone through the kinds of security audits, adversarial testing, and things like that we need to go through before we can allow this. But hopefully this phase is relatively clear to everybody. So with that said, it's sort of worth talking through a little bit how that overlaps with the testnet. And I mentioned that phase 0 is Cosmos and Tendermint only. You can kind of think of phases 1 and 2 of the testnet as similar things. I mentioned phase 3 started to test the Agoric VM, and that's where sort of phase 1 in our mainnet launch happens. The adversarial testnet phase is the first test of permissionless deployment. So permissionless deployment would happen after adversarial, but we think we can phase the mainnet rollout such that we are testing the things we need to test at the lower levels, and then allow the mainnet rollout and then continue on. So that's why these things overlap. And really, it's the team being aggressive about making sure that we're pushing hard as fast as we can, and but doing it in a way that makes sure that everything is tested prior to launch. So obviously, I do expect there will be questions, especially as the testnet rolls on and as more people start to become aware that our mainnet phasing is starting to roll out. So we'll be in Discord to answer more of those questions. And as things come up, we can come up with additional materials to help explain it, to make sure that you're able to explain it to other members of the community, and that everyone sort of understands where we're going. Okay. So with that, I mentioned that one of the things the developers should be looking out for is building against the beta bounties. And the first 3 bounties they're mostly spec'd out already. They should be live sometime either this week or early next week. And we have 3 that we're starting with, each of which is around 2 to 4 weeks, we estimate, for this in terms of single developer time, and each of which would be really important for the Agoric economy. So the first is implementing the core Chainlink contract on Agoric, and it's spec'd out in the bounty. I think it's the Flux Aggregator.sol contract, and that does a lot of the logic around aggregation of different prices coming in for a given asset, taking the median or something along those lines, and that's the primary contract in Solidity that we need a version of in Agoric. And so again, we'll drop a link in Discord to the bounties when they're launched, and there's quite a bit of additional detail included there. But that's a core piece of technical infrastructure for us that we need prior to being able to have prices for the Treasury vaults. So we need to be able to liquidate based on some reference price that we trust, and Chainlink was our Oracle partner to launch. So we want to make sure that we had the end-to-end built there. Michael Fig on our team and several others, we've built out quite a bit of the additional parts of the integration, and this is the last piece. Okay, Next one is a pool-based loan protocol. So I kind of mentioned compound and cream, and that was intentional because one of our initial bounties here is we want to have a loan protocol where users can deposit assets and borrow assets against a pool. During the Agoric Alpha, we launched a peer-to-peer loan protocol, which is sort of I specifically lend to someone else, which could be used as a guide. But I think this will be a little bit of a different structure, and we view this as a core piece of the economy. So we'd be really excited to see a good submission here. And I think this also goes into the category of it gets built for the bounties, it gets permissioned, launched on the chain, and then is part of phase 2 for people to use, including whoever built it. If you want to instantiate your own version and run it, at that point, you'd be able to. So I think that's a really exciting opportunity as well. And then last is the pluggable stable AMM curve. So in Ethereum, we've seen the success of Curve.fi. They did stable swap, which allowed users to make a pool of like assets like stable coins or Ethereum versus synthetic Ethereum or something along those lines. And for us, having a stable value, and that was actually a critical component of stable coins like SUSD and DAI starting to maintain their balance much more closely to the dollar. Obviously, we have Run as our stablecoin, and we want to have a similar dynamic where it doesn't need to trade against other stablecoins on an XYK curve. It can trade on a stable swap like Curve. So we'd love to see a good implementation of similar logic in Agoric and an update to our AMM to allow the pluggability of that curve. So yeah, these are our first 3 bounties. We have more that are coming along the way. If there are things that you specifically are interested in building, that's something that we would listen to, obviously. So please talk to us. A few of you have started working, I think, on things like an Explorer for the Agoric VM. And that's something that will be coming as a bounty later as well. So really, really excited to get these rolling and to see what you guys can build. Okay. So next big piece is Agoric is growing. So we're growing the core team pretty considerably here and hiring for a number of roles. So director of engineering, 2 front-end developer roles on the engineering side, an information architect, and then on the marketing side, developer relations, community and growth manager, 2 operations roles, 1 partner programs manager. So a lot of different kinds of skill sets. So for those of you that have been following us for a while, we know that your networks are important assets. And if you have people that you think would be good fits for these roles, please refer them over to us. We'd love to get these people in and ramped up as quickly as possible. And I think that it's important to say that I mentioned each of the mainnet rollout phases had target dates. I think those in large part are dependent not only on governance, because at some point governance takes over and determines what upgrades should happen, but also on the hiring itself. So we need to have the capacity on our end to actually be able to make the upgrades that we're looking to make, and this is a critical part of that. Our primary listings are on Angel List, so please go to angel.co, and we also have a careers page on our site. So again, critical, important part of what we're trying to do here, and we're definitely looking to grow quickly. All right, so on to events. So Dean is going to be at Bitcoin 2021. He's got a few meetings lined up, but if you're going to be there, reach out to us on Discord and say hi to Dean, because we'd love to have you have him meet our community members. So he'll be there through Friday, I believe. And he is also doing an AMA on Reddit. So June 11th at 1 Pacific time. If you have additional questions, please show up there. If you're a member of the community in general and you want to show support, show up and ask questions there. I think there's probably a lot of people that are going to be new to Agoric, and as community members, it's an important part of making sure that we sort of welcome new people in to be welcoming and have an active question session with Dean. So please do engage him. I know he loves talking to the community. So, and you guys all know that too. Okay, all right, great. So a lot of content to go through here, and I think as we get closer to some of these mainnet rollout phases, we'll have additional content on what it really means as a developer, what you should do as a user, what you should be looking out for. But at a high level, this is really the structure we're thinking about. Would love to hear feedback, comments, questions, either in YouTube now or in Discord later. Always appreciate people reaching out afterwards. Okay, so that was the content that I had prepared here. Happy to wait a couple minutes. I see some familiar people in YouTube, but haven't seen any questions come in. I'll give all of you 10, 15 seconds, and then otherwise, happy to engage in Discord or see you next month at the next community call. All right. Okay, well, with that, I'm going to end it and we'll chat soon. Thanks, everybody.